Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of ITSS Verona's Member Series podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Camilla, and I'm part of the Crime, Extremism, and Terrorism team. Our guest today is Professor Gunaratna, an international expert on terrorism. Professor Gunaratna is Professor of Security Studies at the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies, Nanyang Technology University in Singapore. He has over 30 years of academic, policy, and operational experience in national and global security, and has held senior research positions and fellowships at institutions such as the Combating Terrorism Center at West Point. He's also a prolific author with over 30 published books, and we cannot fail to mention his latest edited volume, the Palgrave Handbook of Terrorism in Africa. Our discussion today will focus on assessing the current state of terrorism in Africa before delving more deeply into the situation in the Sahel with a particular focus on Mali. Professor Gunaratna, thank you so much for being with us today. Let's start right away. So in the introduction of the Palgrave Handbook of Terrorism in Africa, a book which you co-edited, you highlighted that the fact that Africa's terrorist landscape has dramatically evolved from the late 90s, consuming around a third of the African continent. This is mainly due to the emergence of powerful local and transnational terrorist groups, which maintain a high level of activism despite the occasionally successful military operations by regional security forces and Western allies. Could you please give us an overview of the current state of terrorism in Africa?
In 1991, April, Osama bin Laden located from Pakistan, Peshawar to Khartoum, Sudan, and he was host of the Muslim Brotherhood leader Hassan al-Turabi and General Omar Bashir. From Sudan, he trained fighters from Algeria, Morocco, Tunisia, and Egypt in Sudan, and they occupied and created important threat groups in the Maghreb or North Africa. And from North Africa, the threat cascaded to West Africa, especially to the Sahel region. In addition to that, the capabilities bin Laden developed in Somalia by sending Saif al-Adel, his intelligence chief, who is now based in Iran. Al-Qaeda created a capability also in East Africa. And today the threat is moving both from East Africa and West Africa deeper into Africa, into southern Africa. And we have seen the developments in Mogadishu, and now it is impacting on the Indian Ocean area, because a number of states bordering the Indian Ocean in the southern African region are affected both by Al-Qaeda and by ISIS. In parallel, we are seeing that with the emergence of Jenim, that is the Jamaat Nusrat al-Islam wal-Muslimin group in Mali, the threat is shifting now towards the west coast of Africa. So we are seeing that the epicenter of global terrorism is no longer the Middle East, it is Africa, and the center of gravity of terrorism in Africa is Mali.
Thank you for that overview. Now, narrowing our focus now on Mali, which is, as you told me, like one of the countries most affected by jihadist violence in the Sahel, I'd like to turn to Jenim. Some observers argue that jihadist groups do not operate in isolation, but learn from developments in other conflict theaters. In this context, do you see the trajectory of Hayat Tahrir al-Sham in Syria as offering any tactical or organizational lessons that could inform Janim's strategy in Mali?
Hayat Tahrir al-Sham model of capturing power in Syria, Taliban model of capturing power in Afghanistan, Al-Shabaab's capture of power in Somalia. These are the three models used by Jenim now to capture power in Mali. Initially, we saw that Jenim came from 4 groups. And of those groups, most of them were operating in north of Mali. But Jenim has linked up not only with the ethnic Tuareg and the ethnic Fula people, and with that link up, they have gained a very significant support, and they are now surrounding Bamako. And what we are seeing is two very important leaders whom I have followed for many years. They are now leading the fight. One is Aghai, and also the leader who is called Amadou Kofa, who is a Fulani. So one is a Tuareg, or what you call the blue people, and the other is from the Fulani community. They have now surrounded Bamako. When I was 16 years old with my father, I traveled extensively in the Sahara. I traveled many times to the Libyan desert, and I saw the Tuareg people. So we have seen that Jenim is an alliance between the Maghreb people and the Sahel people. With regard to the Maghreb, Jenim Co is Al Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, and also a group called Al Murabitun, that is primarily Algerian, and of course, together with Ansar Deen and another group called Katiba Masain, they formed this alliance called Jenim, and this is today the most powerful threat group in Africa, very much like what happened in Syria, where Hayat Tahrir al-Sham was formed by the then leader that broke away from ISIS, Ahmad al-Shara, known as Abu Muhammad al-Julani. They, of course, captured power, and today he has formed Syria. So it is very likely that for the first time in Africa, we will have another terrorist group that has murdered and killed a lot of people that will come to power in Mali unless the international community intervenes at this moment. And it's the Russians and the Americans will have to talk together, because the Africa Co in Russia, they are having a big presence working with the Mali military. The Americans also have a very small presence, although it has withdrawn most of its troops. The French have withdrawn its troops, but unless the international community wakes up, they have gone to a long sleep. The African leaders and the Western leaders and the Eastern leaders, unless they come together, Mali will fall.
Thank you. JNIM's latest attacks on fuel supply chains started from September 2025, have triggered a significant fuel shortage that is affecting cities like Bamako and disrupting daily life across the country. How do you assess this approach as part of JNIM's broader strategy?
Since September 2025, that's a few months ago, Jenim imposed an economic blockade, and they did that by cutting off the fuel supply. So Mali is very centrally located. To the north of Mali is Algeria, to the east of Mali is Niger, to the northwest of Mali is Mauritania, to the south of Mali is Burkina Faso and Ivory Coast, and to the west of Mali is Guinea and Senegal. And what we have seen is that Jenim has taken control of large parts of Mali, but is also impacting on the security and stability of the neighboring countries. For example, just a few weeks ago, the Jenim also mounted attacks in the neighboring countries of Mali. So Jenim will pose a threat, is posing a threat, a very severe threat, an existential threat, not only to Mali, but also to the neighboring countries. Jenim will be very unhappy with just having Mali, because its uh, ideology is such that they want the conquest of Africa. So we will see the expansion of Jenim to neighboring regions in the coming months and coming years, unless the African leaders and world leaders wake up to this threat.
Last question for you today. How do you assess the relationship between Jenim and ISIL in Mali and across the wider region?
The Islamic State of Greater Sahara, the IS, is cooperating not only with um, other IS entities, but IS and Al Qaeda, that is, Jenim, is cooperating with other Al Qaeda entities. These two groups are competing with each other to seize Africa. They want to take control of Africa. So we have seen that Islamic State has created ISWA, Islamic State West Africa Province. Islamic State has created Islamic State East Africa Province, Islamic State Mozambique. They have also created other entities of Islamic State in Africa. Similarly, Al Qaeda affiliates are Al Shabaab, Jenim, and also a number of other groups in north of Nigeria, in Mali, Niger, Chad. So we are seeing that because of this competition, that it is very difficult now for African states to fight this threat. And I personally believe that this is a leadership challenge for African leaders. If African leaders are not going to wake up now from their deep, deep sleep, and if Western countries are not going to work with the Russians, with the Chinese, with other countries, Africa will fall. It will be a very high price to pay. For Africa to be economically prosperous, it must have political stability. There's no political stability in Mali, certainly, after the military coup. But irrespective of whether there's a military coup or not, what is important and what is key is that governments must recognize terrorism as a severe threat, and they must rise up to this challenge and work, if necessary, even with the military regimes, to dismantle and disrupt uh, these threat groups such as ISIS and Al Qaeda. African people are beautiful people. They have their own beautiful Islam, which is Sufi Islam, but unfortunately, the Salafi jihadi Islam has come from the Middle East and it's ruining the landscape of Africa. So I believe as the first step, African leaders must dismantle Muslim Brotherhood and the Salafi jihadi madrasas, mosques, Islamic institutions, bookstores, and their online platforms, and restore that beautiful African Islam that treated people as humans. So there is no hierarchy in religion, there's no hierarchy in ethnic groups. African leaders must develop a vision to work together to build stability, security, and restore prosperity in Africa in the coming months and coming years. And to do this, they must build capable military forces, capable aid organizations, and partnerships with the East and the West so that Africa can be saved from this rise of terrorism, from this surge of extremism that is engulfing, that is burning parts of Africa.
Professor Gunaratna, thank you very much for joining us today and for sharing your valuable insights on the evolving landscape of terrorism in Africa and the Sahel. Your analysis has been extremely informative, and we truly appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. And we also encourage our listeners to explore the Palgrave Handbook of Terrorism in Africa for a deeper and more comprehensive analysis of the issue.
Thank you. I am very happy to speak to you, Camelia. I understand you now are a part of the famous institute in Verona, and it was my pleasure to visit Italy and visit Verona and see Romeo and Juliet in its current form. So I think that you will do a lot to fight and support for the stability and security of Africa. And I thank you very much for interviewing me.
Thank you.